Welcome to Canadian Coffee House Crime. My name is Catherine. Today's story is coming from Toronto, Ontario, in the neighborhood of Church and Wellesley. The neighborhood is home to about 26,000 people. The portion of the neighborhood bounded by Yonge, Jarvis, Maitland, and Carleton Streets was once the estate of Alexander Wood. Alexander Wood was born in Scotland in January 1772. He moved to Upper Canada in 1793 and settled in Toronto. He established himself as one of the city's leading merchants in 1801, opening his own store, providing quality goods imported from London and Glasgow. The first sidewalk of Toronto was laid on the northwest corner of his King and Frederick shop. In 1810, Wood found himself at the center of a scandal when he investigated a sexual assault case. Not sure why a store owner would investigate a sexual assault case, although. The victim, referred to as Miss Bailey, came to Wood claiming that she did not know the identity of her attacker. However, she had scratched her assailant's penis during the assault. In order to identify the assailant, Wood personally inspected the genitals of a number of suspects for injury. There is no evidence on the public record that Wood acted improperly during the investigation or of Wood's actual sexual orientation. Rumors began to emerge about his conduct, although including allegations that Miss Bailey never existed at all, and that Wood had fabricated the sexual assault charge as an opportunity to fondle and seduce young men. Wood became the subject of ridicule and was tagged with the nickname Molly Wood. Molly back then was slang expression for homosexual man. As homosexuality was illegal at the time, he was looked at a potential sodomy charges, but wouldn't be charged if he left Canada, and Wood left for Scotland in October 1810. He returned to Toronto in 1812 and stayed for 17 years. In 1827, he purchased 50 acres of land at Yonge and Carleton Streets, which was referred to as Molly Wood's Bush throughout the 19th century. Molly Wood's Bush became familiar to the Toronto gay men community for many decades and was a well-known cruising area for gay men. The area also became known as a friendly environment where people could be open about their sexual orientation. In 2005, a statue of Wood was erected in the neighborhood, honoring him as a forefather of Toronto's modern gay community. The statue incorporated a rose on the lapel of Wood's coat in a nod to Pierre Elliott Trudeau, the Prime Minister who decriminalized same-sex adult sexual behavior in 1969, providing the facts took place in private and those involved are over 21. But homosexual acts remained defined in law as a crime. On January 18, 2018, police task forces arrested Bruce McArthur, a 66-year-old self-employed Toronto landscaper, after the investigations of 8 men that had disappeared from the LGBTQ neighborhood of Church and Wells between 2010 and 2017. Thomas Donald Bruce McArthur was born on October 8, 1951, in Lindsay, Ontario, and was raised on a farm. With Bruce and his sister, his parents fostered troubled children from Toronto, often with 6 to 10 in their care at any given time. A young Bruce attended a one-room schoolhouse outside Woodville and did not fit in with other boys. Bruce felt his dad may have sensed his homosexuality. Bruce had trouble accepting his sexual orientation, which would have been seen as abnormal in rural Ontario at the time. Bruce went to nearby Fenelon Falls Secondary School for his secondary education, where he met and began dating Janice Campbell, both graduating in 1970. Bruce later graduated from a program in general business and married Campbell when he was age 23. Bruce began working for the Eaton's department store chain as a buyer's assistant around 1973, a few blocks north from the Wellesley streets. In 1979, Bruce and his wife moved into a house on Ormond Drive in Oshawa. By 1981, they had a daughter, Melanie, and a son, Todd. In 1986, the family bought a home on Cartiff Avenue in Oshawa. Bruce began having sexual affairs with men in the early 1990s. More than a year later, he came out to his wife, but they continued living together. Sometime after 1993, Bruce's employment in the clothing trade came to an end, and the couple faced financial difficulty. Bruce separated from his wife in 1997 and moved to Toronto, as there was no gay community in Oshawa at that time. He frequented the bars of Church and Wellesley, Toronto's gay village, and moved into an apartment on Don Mills Road while pursuing a 4-year relationship with another man. When they broke up and his divorce was being finalized, Bruce saw a psychiatrist and was prescribed Prozac for several months. At about this time, he was attempting to gain work as a landscaper. Just after noon on October 31st, 2001, a few weeks after his 50th birthday, Bruce followed actor and model Mark Henderson into his apartment building after being invited into Henderson's apartment to see his Halloween costume and attacked him. Mark had suffered injuries to his head and body and needed several stitches on the back of his head and fingers, as well as 6 weeks of physiotherapy. Bruce turned himself in after the attack and pleaded guilty to charges of assault with a weapon and assault causing bodily harm, and received a conditional sentence of 729 days. He stated his behavior may have been due to the combination of his anti-seizure medication with amyl nitrate, a muscle relaxant which is sometimes taken recreationally before sex. In 2014, the conviction was subsequently expunged from his record and would not have appeared in criminal background checks during subsequent investigations. In 2002, Bruce was registered with a gay fetish dating website for men into BDSM, where his profile noted his interest in submissive men. Bruce had become a part of the gay community and was a regular at its bars. He was living in a 19th floor apartment at Leaside Towers in Thorncliffe Park, a neighborhood populated mainly by immigrants about 5 kilometers northeast of Church and Wellesley. Bruce's 2003 banishment from Church and Wellesley by the courts due to the attack he executed on Mark Henderson remained well known, and he had developed a reputation for BDSM and rough sex. Bruce had become a self-employed landscaper called Artistic Designs. A colleague who installed water features on 3 of Bruce's projects said that Bruce was always accompanied by an older white man who appeared to be romantically involved with him, and a day laborer, usually Asian or Middle Eastern descent. Most of McArthur's clients were wealthy elderly women who found him charming, and he had built a client base through personal recommendations. During the off-season, Bruce portrayed Santa Claus at an Agincourt Mall and made floor gifts for charities. His son Todd was reported to have difficulty accepting his father as gay. In 2014, Todd was sentenced to 14 months in jail for making multiple obscene phone calls. He was released on bail in order to stay with his father at his Toronto apartment and assist him with Bruce's landscaping business. A former friend of Todd's visited one night and discovered the wall of Bruce's bathroom was decorated with photos of naked men with erections. He said that most of the men appeared to be East Indian, and that Todd said that they were men whom his father knew. On November 11, 2013, police interviewed Bruce after an anonymous tip linked Bruce to 3 missing men, one named Skanda Navaratnam, Abdulbasir Fizi, and Majid Hayhan. Bruce told police that he knew 2 of the men and regularly interacted with Navaratnam at a gay bar, but denied being in a relationship with him. Bruce also admitted to employing Hayhan, whom he had broken off a sexual relationship with. According to his 2016 case summary, there was still nothing to explain what had happened to these men. On June 26, 2017, one day after attending Pride Toronto, Andrew Kinsman, 49 years old, disappeared from Cabbagetown and was last seen in the area of his residence on Winchester Street. Kingsman, who was openly gay and had deep roots in the community, was regarded as a stable and responsible man whose friends felt would not suddenly leave, and certainly not without his 17-year-old cat or his prescription medicine. It was also noted to be unlike Kinsman to go anywhere without notifying friends or family. Kinsman was active on social media, but investigators found his cell phone was turned off the day he disappeared. After investigations, police found Bruce on Kinsman's calendar for June 26, the same day Kinsman was last seen. That day, surveillance video outside Kinsman's residence showed Kinsman approach a red vehicle. The video did not show a license plate or a clear picture of the driver, but Chrome sighting identified it as a 2004 Dodge Caravan. There were more than 6,000 similar models in Toronto, but only 5 were registered to someone named Bruce. Of those, the only 2004 model belonged to Bruce. They matched the van from surveillance video of Bruce's apartment, but it was no longer at his residence. The police found it intact and had it towed away, also copying surveillance video of McArthur visiting the shop. Officers had found trace amounts of blood in the vehicle. This blood was identified as Kinsman's. The investigation into Bruce McArthur noted circumstantial evidence that suggested Bruce's involvement in the disappearance of 5 men, including Kinsman. Police obtained a log of Bruce's key fob for his apartment and a tracking warrant for his cell phone. They built a timeline of the day Kinsman went missing. DNA evidence from Bruce's van, which matched Kinsman and a man named Salim Essen, 44 years old. He was reported missing by a friend. Police initially described Essen as a man of no fixed address, who often pulled a wheeled suitcase. Essen was a Turkish citizen who had first come to Canada to be with a partner that he had met in Turkey. Investigators obtained a general warrant for Bruce's apartment. Police then covertly entered Bruce's residence and cloned his computer's hard drive. 2 pieces of evidence came to light directly connecting Bruce to the disappearance of Essen and Kinsman. A partial download from Bruce's computer, which was going through forensic analysis of deleted files, yielded post-mortem photos of the victims that day. Round-the-clock surveillance was put on Bruce with instructions that he should be immediately arrested if observed alone with anyone. Police surveilling Bruce decided to apprehend him shortly after they saw a young man enter his Thorncliffe Park apartment on January 18, 2018, believing the man's life was at risk. The officers found the young man restrained on a bed when they entered Bruce's apartment. The man was shaken but not injured. The man had arrived in Canada from the Middle East 5 years earlier, was married and had not told his family that he was gay. He had met Bruce through a dating app and said that they had met for sex several times. He had agreed to keep his relationship with Bruce secret and let himself be handcuffed to Bruce's steel bed frame. Bruce put a black bag over his head and tried to tape his mouth shut before police officers interrupted him. The officers had a search warrant for the apartment obtained after gaining blood evidence from McArthur's van. Police seized electronic devices from the apartment, including 5 cell phones, 5 computers, 3 digital cameras, and about a dozen USB flash drives. Evidence in McArthur's apartment shortly after the arrest prompted investigators to charge him with 2 counts of first-degree murder of Andrew Kinsman and Salim Essen. Their bodies had not been found, but police said that they had a pretty good idea of how they died. Bruce's computer had grisly photos of his suspected victims kept as trophies. At the time of Bruce's arrest, police believed that he was responsible for the deaths of other men and were most concerned with identifying these victims. The case was considered unprecedented, with hundreds of officers involved and 30 properties to be searched. The Ontario Provincial Police, the Ontario Forensic Pathology Service, and the Centre of Forensic Sciences were aided with the searches of Bruce's apartment and his Leaside property. Police executed search warrants at 5 properties associated with Bruce and his landscaping business. The owners of the Leaside residence were barred from their homes so that forensic investigators could search it. The search of the property was extended to an adjacent ravine, aided by cavalier dogs and members of the heavy urban search and rescue team. Cavalier dogs took a strong interest in large planter boxes. The planters had frozen to the ground, requiring heaters to thaw them. A large planter was wrapped and brought to the coroner's office. Police announced that they had found the dismembered skeletal remains of at least 3 people in 2 of 12 large planter boxes seized from the Leaside residence. Although the remains had not been identified, police had gathered enough evidence to charge Bruce with 3 additional counts of first-degree murder in the presumed deaths of Majid Kayen, 58, an Afghan immigrant, Sarush Mahmoudi, a refugee from Iran, and Dean Lizowick, 44, a homeless, drug-addicted sex worker. The investigation became the largest Toronto has undertaken. Bruce was the deadliest known serial killer in Toronto and the most prolific gay serial killer in Canada, as police announced that they had found the remains of 3 more people in planters from this Leaside residence, and that one of the 6 sets of remains belonged to Andrew Kinsman. Identified through fingerprints, investigators said that it could be months before all the remains were identified. Additional planters were seized from across the city. 10 forensic investigators spent hundreds of hours in 4 months searching every inch of Bruce's apartment. They took more than 18,000 photographs and collected over 1,800 items. Skandaraj Navaratnam's remains and those Mahmoodi were identified through dental records and had been recovered from planters at the Leaside residence. Other sets of remains had been recovered from the Leaside planters were Abdul Bazir Fazi, Salim Asen, Dean Lizowick, and Kurushna Kumar Kangaratnam, who was 37 and from Sri Lanka. Bruce had covered his tracks using aliases online, using payphones instead of cell phones, and avoiding areas with surveillance cameras. Bruce had targeted vulnerable men who did not have a fixed address or had not told their families that they were gay. 20 police investigators conducted excavations in the forested ravine behind the Leaside property. They began sifting through a large compost pile and then proceeded with the guidance of trained dogs and a forensic anthropologist. They collected human remains almost every day of this search. The remains belonged to Majit Khan. Bruce was detained at the Toronto South Detention Centre in segregation and under constant suicide watch. He made his first court appearance on January 19, 2018. A year later, on January 29, 2019, Bruce pleaded guilty to each of the 8 first-degree murder charges that he was facing, ending the possibility of any trial. He divulged details of the killings which took place in Toronto between 2010 and 2017. Each murder was either premeditated or involved other crimes which qualified them as first degree. 6 were sexual in nature and 5 included confinement. McArthur kept trophies from his victims, including jewelry and a notebook. DNA from 4 of the victims had been found in Bruce's van. Bruce had hundreds of post-mortem digital photographs of his victims, which were recovered forensically after he tried to delete them. He took staged post-mortem photographs, typically with ropes around their necks or with them nude in a fur coat or hat. Some photographs had them with their heads and beards shaved, with Bruce having kept their hair in Ziploc bags in a shed at Mount Pleasant Cemetery. Bruce sought out and exploited the vulnerabilities in his victims and made his crimes difficult to detect. That he used sex to lure them, killing many in his bedroom through ligature strangulation. One photograph showed a rope around a victim's neck twisted with a metal bar wrapped in tape, a mechanism to control the pressure during strangulation. The bar was found in Bruce's 2017 van and contained the DNA of Kinsman and Essen. Bruce's sentencing hearing began on February 4th, 2019. The Crown asked for a 50-year parole ineligibility, citing the enormity of Bruce McArthur's crimes, his lack of remorse, the betrayals upon his victims, the effects of his crimes on the community, and how he had been a danger up to his arrest. February 8th, Bruce was sentenced to life imprisonment with no parole eligibility for 25 years. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Catherine, and this is Canadian Coffeehouse Crime, video number 35 on October 1st, 2023. Please feel free to press the like button as it helps in my exposure and subscribe to my channel. I try to put out a new video every week. See you in the next case.